So if anybody comes in, you need a place to put them, okay? So thank you all for coming. This is so wonderful. The reason you're all here today is because somebody's been telling somebody to come to Seacoast Senior Seminars. So that really warms our hearts, and we are so excited to see you. Next month we might be at the Hilton. They can accommodate more of us, but we'll see if they're done with their remodel by then. So I'm Nancy Pewter, and I'm the founder of Seacoast Seniors. I'm also a real estate broker with Keller Williams and Slow Happy Homes here in Pismo Beach, along with my partner Shannon Bowdy and Michelle, who greeted you at the front desk. So just real quick, bathrooms. Bathrooms are right down on the left. Just go out the door and down just a short ways on the left. But you do need a card, and we've got several cards. So if you would like to use the restroom, just get one from Michelle or Larry. Larry's running around here somewhere. If he doesn't show up soon, we're going to have to confiscate his bathroom cards. Because we've got enough for 5 people to go at one time. And, okay, what else? I would like to say thank you to our sponsors. You know, our sponsors are so generous with their finances. Zoe is a sponsor. Raise your hand, Zoe. And Christy is a sponsor with Home Matters. Do I have any other sponsors here today? Okay. They finance these seminars for us. So let's give them a big hand. Okay. When you came in, you probably got a learning card, or you've had one before. And the way that works is in front of you, you should have a little packet, but loose from the packet is an evaluation form. If you could give us some feedback before you leave, it really helps us make the seminars better and better all the time. Hi, Jean. And once you turn in your evaluation sheet, you get your hole punched on your learning card, and once you have 10 punches, you get a $10 Panera card. So, woo! Come on. So, I know we owe a couple of Panera cards right now. I think 10 Sullum is owed a Panera card because I didn't have them last time. So I'm going to give this to Ted. Ted's been here probably more than 10 times. Bob Dunn got one a couple of meetings ago. Was there anyone else that we missed last time that should have gotten one? Okay. Yes, Janice. That's right. Janice and Robert, absolutely. So, would you get that down to Janice? Thank you, Janice. Janice is a great supporter of Seacoast Seniors. So you're probably all here today because you want to know a little bit more about how to stay dependent. Nobody wants to be that old person that everybody's talking about that lives in the house down the street with the leads, up to the porch, or who's running around their underwear, out front. So, I'm here to tell you it is not normal to get dementia. I think everybody thinks they're going to get sick and die, but it doesn't have to be that way. Getting older doesn't mean getting sick and getting dementia. Yes, it happens, but it's not written in stone. I'm working with a lot of people in their 80s and 90s who are in tip-top shape, honestly, and their brains are just fine. So I want to do all I can to alleviate that fear from your minds, because I do know that we all think about it sometimes, and I don't think it's hereditary either. So just don't go there, okay? We want you to stay independent as long as you possibly can. And the whole gist of Seacoast Seniors is to have you have a backup plan, a plan B. So how many people in the room want to live in their home until they pass away? Okay, yeah. So they've done studies, and 99% of people do want to live in their home until they pass away. They buy a house that's, just perfect for them, and they figure they'll just die in their sleep, and somebody will carry them out in a box.
It sounds so lovely.
Does that sound good? Maybe have a pillow, a couple of pillows on the table, just in case. But the truth is that 70% of people don't finish their last days in their home. So wouldn't you, say for instance there was a crisis and you were in the hospital, you get out, you're all ooh, because you're on so many drugs. The kids converge over the weekend, or your caseworker from the hospital, and they manage that you can't go home because of your condition, and someone else chooses where you're going to be. So 2 months later, you wake up, the fog clears, you're not on the drugs anymore, and you might be somewhere you never in a million years would have chosen yourself. So this is why you need to have a plan B. Our whole focus and our mission is to educate, equip, and empower older adults and their families so that they make knowledge-driven versus crisis-driven decisions as they age. Unfortunately, most people wait until the crises, and then they start scrambling like crazy, make a lot of bad decisions. The kids are fighting, and that's how Seacoast Senior was born, because I've been a realtor for 42 years, and Shannon has been a realtor for 20 years, and we can't even begin to count how many times we've walked into a situation where a crisis had occurred and they wanted us to list the house. Meanwhile, the kids are fighting. It's complete chaos. They don't know who to call, so they're just getting on Google and not always making the best decisions. So it's just bad, really bad. So we decided to do something about it, and that's why we're here. Today we're going to help you get your head wrapped around some of your options, and hopefully when you leave, you're going to feel smarter than when you left. Okay? Sound good? Okay, so turn to your neighbor and say, you're going to learn something today.
Me too. I'm going to learn something.
Okay, now turn to your other neighbor and say, it's about time. Have I forgotten anything, or should I just get right into it? Have I forgotten anything? Okay, we're going to get started, and for time's sake, we have 3 guest speakers here today who have very kindly donated their time. They're not getting paid, to share with you some options. There's lots of options out there, and we try to cover everything, but we can only do so much at each seminar. So we're going to speak to these 3 speakers who are going to introduce themselves for time's sake. And then towards the end of the seminar, we will have a short 10-minute question and answer period. If we don't have time to get to your question, they have all agreed to stay for a little while afterwards and answer any other questions that you might have, or set up a private consultation. So let's get started. Christy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning. My name is Christy, and I am here with Home Matters Caregiving. We provide in-home care.
Hi, my name is Spring, and I work for the Villages of San Luis Obispo.
Hi, I'm Zoe Rathel with Cross Country Mortgage, and I'm a mortgage advisor.
Great. Wow, those are the shortest intros we've ever had. Okay. I didn't mean you guys had to be short. Okay. All right. So, so Christy, hold on. There we go. What would you say to someone who says they really don't need any help around the house and maybe they would call someone when they need them?
Everyone always needs help, even I do. So it's hard to manage every day alone. Even if you're capable of preparing your own meals, doing your housekeeping, there's probably something that you need help with, whether it's grabbing a box that's out of reach, helping you tie your shoes, or just having breakfast, lunch, dinner with you, spending that time and really getting that companionship. It's easy for us to be isolated, especially when our mobility has probably declined a little bit. It's not so easy to just leave your house on a whim, and having someone come regularly to spend that time and help you, even seeking outside activities, having someone to take a walk with you or to do a puzzle with or to attend one of these seminars with even. It's just nicer sometimes to have that extra help and that person that can come to you and you can build a relationship with them. So aside from regular caregiving tasks, we also offer companionship, and we also offer help with leaving your legacy. So let's say you don't need help with your activities of daily living, leaving your story behind is something that someone could come and help you with, because we've all had these beautiful, amazing lives that you wouldn't otherwise get to share. And so just being able to share those things with the people that you're going to ultimately leave behind is really important as well.
Thank you, Christy. Well said. Well said. And she only touched on a few of the things she can help with. One of the things that I like is that they can prep your food for you. You know, so if you're still doing your own meal preparation, etc., you know, I mean, how nice to have somebody cut up a bunch of onions and celery for the week. I hate that part of the job. But there's just so much. Or walk your dog. That's another big one. So, Spring.
Excuse me,
Yes.
what was the name of your organization again?
Home Matters Caregiving.
Home Matters.
Oh, Matters.
Yeah. And we have materials, all of our panelists have materials at the back of the room that you could take with you when you leave. So Spring, what do you think is one of the most important things to consider when one wants to stay independent as long as possible?
So I have two answers here. I think it's really important that everybody write down what their definition of independent is. And I encourage you to read this definition every year and not change it. Okay? So then you get a really good idea of what the independent you considered staying independent. So I think that that is important for all of us, and that can be done at any time. Once that is done, I would say the most important piece to staying independent is getting the right support. So whether that looks like a group of girlfriends that are always there for each other, a group of guys that always come and help each other out of stuff, or whether that is caregiving coming into your home, or moving into a community, or, moving closer to the kids, whatever that is, to get that support that you need to stay independent. When we have people around us, there's someone to notice if we have a change in condition, or if maybe we need to go to the doctor, or if we've forgotten to take our pills for 3 days in a row, or to get the dog out of the house, just to have a happy dog and a clean house. Whatever that support is that you need to stay independent, that's the key, is getting that support. When we don't have enough support, the incident happens, right? And that's when Nancy's talking about where your family now has to come in and make all the decisions for you, right? So plan B.
Just go for a road state?
Hopefully not.
Okay, we got a jokester. So, yeah, that's good information. Thank you. Okay, so Zoe, you might wonder why Zoe's here. Like, why is she here?
Why am I here?
Zoe is here as part of talking about being independent because I think it's really important that you understand the truth about reverse mortgages. A lot of us, especially all of us that are older, have a really bad taste in our mouth about them because we've heard some horror stories. And even, if you go online, you might even get some. Just remember, when you go online, anybody can put something online. So the reverse mortgages today are so safe, and they're insured by FHA, correct?
That's correct.
And so I think that as we get older, costs are going up. If you're hell-bent on staying in your home, let's get you situated not only with good in-home care and address any safety issues in the house, but also let's make sure you're not living hand to mouth. If you don't have to, you're sitting on a house with a large amount of equity, and you can't afford, Christy, to come for 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours a week and walk the dog and prep or just, watch a TV show with you, then that's sad. I just think that's so sad. Or what if you want to go see the kids and you just can't afford the airfare, or what are some other things? It's just, I meet so many seniors that are living hand to mouth, and they're sitting on this huge equity and they don't want to move no matter what. Okay, if that's you, then you need to understand what reverse mortgages are about. So they are not for everyone, but for the right people, they can just turn your life completely around and give you the freedom that you need. So, sorry, I hope I didn't talk too much.
No, but I'll leave now. You're done.
I'm very passionate about
Thank
that.
you. Yes.
Okay. So Zoe, I want to ask you, when is a good time to consider a reverse mortgage?
Well, I would say it's good to be here today and just get basic information. It's not that you're committing to anything, it's just more information. But as far as considering a reverse mortgage, many of my clients that I help with reverse mortgages have come to me on an occasion where they're in need. So we have inflation, I've had a high health bill, I need to do some work around my home. How will I have the funds to do these things? So they have a specific need now. That's okay, and we can move forward with that. But many clients now, because reverse mortgages, as Nancy mentioned, have become so much safer, and we can dig into that later, but they're very safe today. Many financial advisors are starting to look at these as part of a retirement plan where you actually are looking at this before a specific need at your front door. You're looking at it longer term. What if I outlive my savings, my retirement savings? What can we do now with this huge amount of equity that's in our home to potentially plan for that eventuality? What if you are healthy into your 90s? Is your nest egg going to take you there? So I think the main thing when you're thinking about a reverse mortgage, to just kind of turn your head just a little bit, is just think about it this way. You have put in a significant amount of money every month for many, many years into an investment vehicle. It's appreciated in time. This is really no different than you putting money into your retirement account with your financial advisor that hopefully grows in time. And at a certain point in your golden years, you want to start tapping those funds. It's very similar. It's okay. This is, for some people, again, as Nancy said, it's not for everybody, but for some people, this is their nest egg, their home. They have a large amount of equity. You've put your money aside every month to pay. You've either paid it off or it's a low balance left. There's nothing wrong with utilizing some of the equity. It is a portion. It is not all of your equity, but using some of it to fund your life. And that can be, as Nancy mentioned, something needed, or it can be really creating a living legacy. A lot of people, well, I want an inheritance for my kids. I want to leave something to my kids. What if you were able to provide something to them now? Like, I want my kids to live near me with the grandkids. I can give them a down payment for a house to live here. What if you wanted to help your grandchildren with their education and college? So some people, all their money is tied up in that house. We don't want to necessarily sell the house to get the funds for these things, again, whether they're needs or wants. So how can it all work together? And for those instances, it's a great solution.
Right, and you don't have to make a payment for the rest of your life. I just want to throw that in.
Yes, that is
Not
correct.
everyone knows that.
Yes, so the commitment, I'm a mortgage advisor that I could help somebody with a cash out refinance, and then you'd have a traditional loan. You would have a monthly payment, and that's definitely an option as well. If you qualify, you could get cash out of your equity. There's a variety of vehicles, but today we're talking about a reverse mortgage that helps people with their day-to-day cash flow, meaning I can help you gain that equity in your hand in a variety of different ways, but you don't have to make a monthly payment on it as long as you live in the home for the rest of your life.
Question.
Yeah.
I have a question. I want to make a comment. What occurred to me when you were saying this stuff about reverse mortgages and people who want to stay in their home till their toes are up, in a way, it's a way to finance your own facility. So to speak.
That is absolutely the case.
Versus selling your home and using that money to pay for a facility that is God knows what expensive. So from that perspective, that's kind of a new thought for me. Is going,
So can we hold any questions until the Q&A period?
Oh, okay.
Thank you, though. We appreciate your comment. Okay, thank you, Zoe. Christy, why is it advantageous to interview an in-home person and establish a relationship before the crisis happens?
So I meet a lot of people who call me and they need care today or yesterday. And in that case, you're desperate and you're going to go with whatever agency or person comes to you and says, hey, I can do it today. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're the best fit for you. That doesn't necessarily mean that you've done your due diligence to make sure they're licensed, insured, that their caregivers are meeting the state requirements. So finding someone beforehand, like we were talking about earlier, you might find someone to just come and hang out with you for a little bit, rather than needing assistance with bathing and all of those other really fun things we don't really want to think about. So finding someone beforehand and establishing that relationship means that you're going to trust the agency that you have chosen out of the many that you will interview, and that you're building this relationship with your caregiver and the agency. So when those really vulnerable moments come and you can't do those really personal hygiene tasks on your own, there's someone that you trust doing those things with you and for you. And I think that's really important to do that and think, forward thinking in this process is really, really important. So make sure that you're checking all of those things. Make sure that you are doing your due diligence and looking on Google and reading the reviews and talking to other people, maybe your friends, maybe Nancy, people that you trust to refer you to the right agency, because there's a lot of them out there, but not all of them are the same. So just be careful and make sure that you're asking certain questions. And if you want to know what those questions are, I'm more than happy to talk with you after.
So Christy, why would I call an agency when I've got this lady that lives next door who has a son who did some caregiving a while back, and he's gonna do it a lot cheaper than you are?
So the reason it's less expensive is because this person is just a person. They don't necessarily have training. They don't have their own insurance. So if they were to be injured or something were to happen in your home, you're now liable for that. Another big thing is trust. So all of our caregivers are background checked through the state. And it's a very, very rigorous process that sometimes takes months. So finding a stranger to come into your home, you don't know what their background is like. You don't know that you can trust them. There's no checks and balances. So with an agency, we're randomly checking in with our caregivers just to make sure that they're complying with everything that they're supposed to. But finding a private caregiver outside of that is really scary. I've seen some bad situations where families have lived out of town and they've hired private caregivers, and then we come in and there's these horrible things going on that the family's not aware of. And at that point, the senior then is not capable of either cognitively understanding the situation, or maybe physically not able to care for themselves, and then ultimately they're stuck in their bed, and this person's not actually caring for them. Also, finances. A lot of people out there will see it as an opportunity to take advantage of a senior and maybe steal some of their financial things or some of their personal belongings. So it's really scary. There are some amazing private caregivers out there, but they're few and far between, and it's really, really important to make sure that you're understanding what you're getting into by hiring a private caregiver, because it's definitely not the same. Another big point is, I'll give you an example. This morning on my way here, a caregiver called off their shift not very long before the shift was going to start. So that leaves that senior without care. But by having an agency, we have a whole team that can step in and make sure that that senior is still receiving the care at the time that they had planned on having someone there, and it's someone else that they're familiar with as well. So if you're hiring a private caregiver and they get sick, or they just disappear and you don't know where they are, you don't have anyone else to show up and make sure you're okay.
Perfect. So well said. Excuse me. Spring. We all know that all of our lives we heard, "Don't ever put me in a home." So much, and with so much dread and forbidding, that it's just, we don't even consciously think it. So when we talk about moving to senior living, sometimes people just shudder. And a lot of times people are already gone. The mother or the father that said, "Don't ever put me in a home," and it's still, after all these years, is lurking in their emotional state. So Spring, would you address some of that and tell us a little bit about what senior living really is?
Sure. So let me start by telling you that when I was a child, I had a grandma move from New York to California, and my stepdad found a retirement community, or, I was little, I'm not sure exactly if it was a nursing home or assisted living, but what I remember is it was dark, and it was cold, and it didn't smell very nice. People were not extremely happy. My grandma lived in New York and did not mind sitting in a row of chairs in the front of the building that looked over the street, chatting with her friends. So she was happy, but I didn't want to go visit her there ever, right? So I also had this idea in my mind of just a cold, unhappy, uncaring, kind of not really cared for sort of place. So then, I grew up to work with families and people, and after having my own, I did not want to work with children anymore. So I thought about where could my education still take me to work with families and people, and I decided to come and check out the Villages, which is very different from anything I have ever done. And as I was getting there, I almost turned around and went home. I was like, this is going to be depressing. This is going to be really cold. Like, I'm not going to like this. People aren't going to be happy. I should just go home. I can't do this. Somehow I made it there, okay? 9.5 acres of swimming pools and flowers and the creek and sunshine and people smiling and playing and living very independent lives. So it really broke the idea that I had in my head of what retirement living looks like. I think maybe I was kind of picturing an old skilled nursing kind of environment, but it's bright, it's happy, and I describe it all the time as grown-up summer camp. So, right, even if this is not what you see for your future, you may want to check communities out in case your future takes a turn you weren't expecting. And I feel very confident that even if you don't walk in and go, oh yes, sign me up right away, it will reduce the fear and anxiety about that being potentially in your future. There's people that are happy and they are enjoying themselves, and it is independent. Everybody that lives in independent living is a full-grown adult, and they live on their own terms. We don't tell you when to eat or what to eat or when to go to bed or, when you can leave or what you can do. It is like renting an apartment anywhere in the city with some very good services that will stretch out your independence. Like someone's there doing all the landscaping, someone's doing the cooking, the cleaning, the shopping, right? Someone's planning activities, someone is there to provide transportation. There's somebody there to notice if you have a change in your condition and you're just kind of not quite yourself, and that kind of support keeps you independent. And I do encourage people to take a look, because it's better than being scared if you've lost control of the direction that your life is going to take. If you're needing that extra care and someone else is making that decision, it's going to help you to have seen a few places and be like, that one's okay. Don't put me there, right? This one over here is all right, and you can be like, this is the place I want to go if I should ever need that, right? And then there's that anxiety gone, and you already have a little bit of a plan B if that's the direction that your life takes you.
That's great, Spring. So, I had a question in my mind, but I get so involved paying attention to what you're talking about. I can't remember what it was. Okay, so I will think of it and ask you next time around. Zoe. Okay, Zoe, tell us a little bit more about the reverse mortgage, and what are some of the myths? We need to, I think, address some of the myths, like can they ever make me move out of my home?
So, yes, so a reverse mortgage, and you might see it in the world as a HECM, which is a home equity conversion mortgage, and that is the government backed through the Housing and Urban Development Department of our government through FHA. That's a reverse mortgage. They're interchangeable, reverse mortgage and HECM. So a reverse mortgage is for seniors to tap the equity, we talked about that, some of your equity in your home for 62 years and older. And some of the myths that exist, unfortunately, came from truths in the past, And that's why I mentioned they've, I would say reverse mortgages have grown up and moved along and adapted in so many ways that there's so many safeguards in place now to make them safer. So, first reverse mortgage was actually in 1961, and they've really grown since then. And one myth would be that somehow, as you mentioned, the bank owns your home and they can kick you out at any time. Completely false. A reverse mortgage, or a HECM, whatever you want to call it, it's very similar. There's only a few differences with a traditional forward mortgage. So just like a forward mortgage, you own title to the property. It is just another loan that is on title. It's a lien on the property. The only commitments that you're making to a reverse mortgage are one that it remains your primary residence. And that doesn't mean you can't have a vacation home you go to a couple of months out of the year. This is still your primary residence and you're living in it. You will keep it in good repair. So that means, it's there's no health or safety issues. And that you'll pay your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance and any HOA dues that you may have if you have a property in an HOA. So in the past, reverse mortgages did not include what's called a financial assessment. So in the past, there were times that seniors were not able to keep their home in good repair. They did not pay their property taxes or homeowner's insurance. So it was not a good long-term solution for that senior. And so those became issues where the bank said, wait a minute, you're not paying your taxes and insurance. So, however, today's reverse mortgage requires that we do a financial assessment to make sure it is a good long-term solution for the senior. And so in that way, we're making sure that those issues that have happened in the past do not happen today. So that's one of the myths. Another myth is that if I tap equity in my home, I won't have an inheritance. Somehow I'll be leaving my children in debt. That's a concern that has also been addressed by the new regulations with reverse mortgages. And that is because we're only going to be allowing a loan amount, which is in the reverse mortgage world called a principal limit, but think about it as your loan, how much money I can give you. That is a small portion of your total value. So for an example, it depends on your age. If your home was worth $1 million and you owed nothing on it, maybe you would have access to $400,000, 40%. It depends on your age, but that's a good example. So we've already set aside 60% of your equity that's not going to be touched at all. Now Zoe, a reverse mortgage, we mentioned, there's no monthly payment needed. You could make a payment if you wanted to, but most people don't. So that means if you gave me $400,000, over time, that balance is going to go up. I am not making a payment. Interest is accruing. Your balance is going up. What also happens, at least in the state of California, on the Central Coast, most of the time, your value also goes up. So, over time, these are extremely safe for your heirs. You will still be leaving them in equity position. But let's just say the absolute worst thing happened. Some crazy world, you live to 100, the balance is up here, and in that same crazy world, even though we set aside 60% of your equity at the beginning, the world drops out, real estate drops. For some strange reason, that day that you pass, that your heirs have to now deal with your home, possibly sell it, that day, the balance that you have to pay off, and it's not paid off that day, but I'm just explaining, at that point in time, the balance is more than the value. That's the fear, right? That somehow you'll be upside down. As I mentioned, there's so many safeguards in place, hard to imagine that actually occurred, but I'm gonna tell what happens in the worst case scenario, Zoe. These are called, reverse mortgages are called non-recourse loans. So you nor your heirs would ever be personally responsible for any deficit. So what does that mean? On that crazy day or crazy year that your balance was up here and the value did not cover the balance and your heirs go to sell your house, the bank takes the loss. You're never leaving your kids with a debt, but in most instances, when you look at the amortization schedules, you'll still be leaving them probably about the same equity as today, just because of, again, of appreciation over time. So those are the two fears I think most people have, is that the bank owns my house and we don't, and that you're leaving nothing to your kids, and that's not the case either.
Right, and I think we should probably point out, there are some people in here that own mobile homes.
Type of properties that are, work for reverse mortgages, you can do a manufactured home on a permanent foundation, so that's real property, and we can do those. I just closed one. And I'm in North County in Quail Run, that's a 55 and older community with manufactured homes on permanent foundations, just closed a reverse mortgage there. We also, obviously, single family residences, 2 to 4 units, so you can do units as long as you're living in one of them, as well as condominiums. So a mobile home, a true mobile home that's not on a permanent foundation, that's not real property, and so that would not work for a reverse mortgage.
Okay, great. So I met someone in a mobile home park the other day, and they said that their mobile home had been modified so that it was now on a permanent foundation, but he's still renting the land underneath.
Yes, you have to own the land.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I guess we're back to Christy again. So Christy, tell us a little bit about the cost of in-home care. Does Medicare cover it? And is there a minimum amount of hours?
So in-home care is going to probably be your most expensive option compared to moving to a facility or something along those lines. But the benefit you get from it is you get to stay home. So nothing compares to that. It is not covered by any other type of insurance other than long-term care insurance. So a long-term care policy will cover in-home care. Other than that, it's private pay, and the cost really depends on the amount of hours that you need. So in-home care is billed hourly. So right now, the rates in the area vary from $40 to $50 an hour. It can be pretty pricey, but the value you get, it far exceeds what it costs if you are using an agency. There are hourly minimums. So most agencies, the lowest that there is in the area is 4 hours, unless you're at the villages where you can get lower hours through our agency. But typically it's a 4-hour shift minimum, and then there's usually weekly minimums, but our agency doesn't have a weekly minimum.
Yeah, that's really good. You know, a lot of people figure, you know, I'm gonna stay in the home until, you know, I die. And if it gets to where I need someone, I'll just call Christy and have her come in. I want you guys to understand how pricey it can get. So at $45 or $50 an hour, you know, if you need somebody 8 hours a day or even more, it's going to cost a lot. Now, if you get a reverse mortgage, you can continue to stay in your home if you qualify for a reverse mortgage and pay Christy all the money you want. And you're not going to have to go without dinner to pay for your in-home care. Why do I keep going blank today? I had protein for breakfast. But yeah, it's just, so a lot of times people will think that. And now I'm going to ask Spring how much it costs for senior communities and the types of communities that are at the villages But also, what I love about all of our education partners is if their service isn't a good fit for you, they will make you some recommendations to other senior professionals who they respect and trust. So I want you all, I was thinking about getting white hats for my education partners whenever they're speaking. Because how many of you know that there's tons of bad guys out there? There's so many bad guys, and I'm sorry, but ever since I was 50 years old, and it's been a while since I was, that's when my first art magazine came, and, I became a target. So people are stepping up, the scams that they're throwing our way. By the way, next month we have a scam seminar. But it's just really, really important that you pay attention to what they're saying and realize that these are the good guys. The bad guys, you never know what you're going to get when you Google. I don't want to hear about you Googling for a reverse mortgage. I don't want to hear you calling a place for mom. In fact, don't ever click on a place for mom, ever, because if you do, your name and your contact information will be blasted all over the country, and not to mention the security part, but they do nothing to help you. They send your contact information to every Tom, Dick, and Harry in town that threw their hat in the ring to help seniors. And the problem is once you click on a place for mom, then when we do put good professionals, connect them to you to work with, some of these places won't work with the good professional because a place for mom has already branded you with them. And so that professional won't get paid. So I don't think it's right. I'm just gonna say that. I have a tendency to say too much, so I won't. But, yeah, and so, there are a lot of good people that do advertise on a place for mom, but there is absolutely no vetting process whatsoever. So the best thing to do is to always call me or Shannon at Seacoast Seniors, and we will connect you with the good guys, okay? I just wanted to make sure that we covered that. So spring, yes, I wanted you to just cover what you charge, what you have to offer over there, and then what the general cost in the area is.
Okay. So at the Villages, we offer independent living, assisted living, and memory care. Independent living starts at about $4,000. Per month, yes. Assisted living starts closer to $5,000 per month, and then memory care is getting close to $9,000 a month. And they all offer, different things. In independent living, we offer services, so transportation, food, housekeeping, activities, your utilities, so kind of to take all of that off your plate. In assisted living is where we start offering hands-on care. So if you need standby showering, someone to manage your medications, assistance transferring, maybe getting out of bed or getting out of your seat, that is the community where we can start to offer those kinds of things. So in independent living and assisted living, you may be paying a similar rent, but what you're paying for is going to be different. So maybe for the same price in independent living, you're going to have a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. In assisted living, you may have a studio, but you have trained caregivers there to manage medications, to help you with any, kinds of care needs and personal needs that you have. So you're putting your money towards something different there. Again, in memory care is also the trained caregivers, trained medication technicians, but there's a lot more care that goes into each of our residents in memory care to keep them safe and healthy and cared for. And that's why there's that increased price there. It's just more involved in that. So,
Thank you, Spring. Okay, so, if you could just tell us what else you would like everyone to know about how a reverse mortgage can enhance their lives, and anything you may have forgotten to say already, that'd be
Okay,
great.
thank you. So again, with reverse mortgage, there are options. I gave some just general ideas of availability of funds based on your equity. But just so you know, there's a variety of different ways to receive those funds. We could look at it as a lump sum at closing. You could create a income stream for yourself. So those would be either a 10-year, so for the rest of my life, I want to receive $1,500 a month, something to supplement your income because inflation has gone up and you're finding that while you had a plan in place, it's not quite meeting your needs anymore. There's term, so that means for the next 10 years, I'll receive $2,500 a month. These are numbers that we would go up through together. So lump sum and 10-year for the rest of your life, or term for a specific time. There are also what I'm seeing most of my clients use today called a line of credit. And you can use these in combination, so you don't, it doesn't have to be one or the other. But what happens with a line of credit, and why I mentioned that maybe planning ahead is a good idea, you're not paying that interest that's accruing on on a line of credit. It's sitting there available to you when and if you need it. So setting that up now could prepare you for the eventuality of one of the spouses needing additional care outside the home. I have a client that specifically planned for that, and in fact, because they received a diagnosis for her husband, they knew that he was going to have to move into a different care situation, so they wanted that money set aside through the line of credit. She can pay the bill every month through their line of credit. So the benefit of a line of credit as well, that is different than if you were to get a home equity line of credit for your home, is that the line of credit with a reverse mortgage actually grows in value. So if you were to get it today, for example, but didn't touch it for 10 years because you didn't need it, it would continue to grow. And unlike a home equity line of credit that you would get through a bank or a credit union, these are not lines of credit that can be frozen, so it would always be available to you. And so variety of ways to receive the funds, as I mentioned already, super safe today, and the ability to really help you with your life, to live your best life, is an option that you and your family need to, consider. And I know that, I think the other myth that I mentioned, or the fear, is that these are, and we've all been talking, and to be fair, everyone's talking about fees, so let's just get that out there. Reverse mortgages can be an expensive closing cost option. They are. Over time, so these would be when someone comes to me and says, I just was on the phone on the way down here, someone, 97-year-old mom, she's in a medical bed in her home, don't know how much time she has left, but the care is $20,000 a month, mom is running out of money, should we get a reverse mortgage to help her? I'm like, I'm just gonna be honest with you, 97 years old, already in a medical bed, we all know she's probably not gonna be here that long. So for something like that, if you don't, or if you say, I'll do this for now, and then I'm gonna list my home advancing a year from now. These are not solutions because of the expense through the reverse mortgage. These would not be something that you would look at, or I would advise for short term. These would be for people that are anticipating having the home and this reverse mortgage for, 5 to 10 years, to the extent that you can, anticipate that. And then the one other piece we didn't talk about that I've also helped a client with, she's a good friend today, is reverse for a purchase. So this is kind of an interesting way to utilize a reverse mortgage. We've talked about, I already own a home, I'm going to tap some of the equity and not have to make a monthly payment. A reverse for purchase means I'm going to bring a significant amount of money to the closing, but I don't have to bring all the money for the house, the purchase price, for me to have no monthly payment. So many seniors feel like I want to be in a position where I have no monthly payment, and usually in our minds, that says I own the home free and clear. So I will give you a specific example. A client of mine in North County, she and her husband were living in a home with many acres and a great ranch and a beautiful home for, much of their lives, but they got to a position where they just weren't able to keep up with the land. They were already gonna sell their property, and because of his health issues, they felt like they wanted to live in a specific community. Well, the nest egg they had in their home, the net proceeds, was gonna net them about $700,000, but where they wanted to move and have no monthly payment, so in other words, I'm gonna use this money now and buy something free and clear, so I have no monthly payment. Where they wanted to live had gone up, and it was over $800,000 now, what they wanted to, they don't have that. And to complicate things, they had already anticipated with their husband's diagnosis, they were gonna need more money in the bank to help with his care. So we have 700, we can't live where we want, but I don't even have 700 because I want to set aside some to help with my husband's care in the future. So what we were able to do was purchase the home they wanted, but instead of coming in with all their proceeds, they were able to come in with an $800,000 purchase, come in with $500,000 for a reverse for purchase. They set aside that $200,000 that they got from selling their house in their bank to help them with their day-to-day living and what they wanted to do with their husband. And then they still got the house they wanted with no monthly payments for the rest of their life, as long as she lives in the home. And so that was a great solution. So that's another option. If you're trying to downsize or want to move closer to family and not, the numbers aren't quite matching up, but you still want that idea of not having a monthly payment, you don't necessarily have to buy it all cash, free and clear. You can potentially utilize the proceeds from your home to purchase a majority of it. Again, you still have that huge equity position, but not having a small monthly payment. You won't have it at all with a reverse mortgage for purchase.
Perfect. Thank you, Zoe. Spring, do you have anything that you would like to add about the benefits of senior living versus staying in your home until you need it? Because sometimes when you need it, if you wait till you need it, you might
Right, so everybody that comes in that's interested in living in a community will say, when I'm ready, I'd like to come when I need it, I'd like to come when I'm ready. And that's why I encourage you all to sit down and make that list of what your idea of being independent is. Because as we get older, and we become more dependent on our loved ones, or our side tables, or the arms on the chairs, whatever it is, we tend to change our idea of independent along with us. And that is how we get to that moment where we've been feeling so independent and not getting any support for the things we very easily could have gotten support for. And that's when we find ourselves having that incident that Nancy was talking about, and really limiting our ability to make our own choices going forward, because something has to be done right away. So do make that list. What is independent to you? And revisit it and take a look at yourself, and do I need support? I mean, maybe I'm not ready for a community, maybe I'm not ready for a reverse mortgage, maybe I'm not ready for home health, but maybe there is some support that I need now. And reevaluate, get yourself that support, because not having that support in place is how we now have needs, right? Things that we need people to come in and do because we weren't getting that support up front. So that, if I could impart anything to you, is know what your idea of independent is. Get the support that you need to stay independent, and hopefully recognize if there isn't something more you need.
Thank you, Spring. And one of the things I just want to reiterate, I bring this up every time we have a seminar. If you wait until you need it, say you took a tour over at the Villages or somewhere else, or you like what Christy has to say, and she would be the one that you would call. Make sure you tell your family that these are the places that you would like to go for starters. And the second thing is, if you wait until you need it, oftentimes you now don't qualify for where you want to move. So unfortunately, you know, Shannon and I work with a lot of people, and we've had people that said, oh yes, I'm moving into the Villages, or I'm moving into another senior living community, and we want to put the house up for sale, and we're so excited. We've been on their list for a long time and kept putting it off, and now we're ready to go. And then they call us a week later and say the community just turned us down. And so that's because if you wait until you actually need it to go in, oftentimes you will get turned away. Now, if you go in because your care or the risk factor is too high. So go in before you need to. Most likely they're not going to throw you out, but you know, they'll help you with the long-term care. But trying to get in initially when you've already got these problems, most likely you're going to get bumped over to either assisted living or skilled nursing. So I just think it's really important to know that. And the other thing is, Christy's so nice. She talks so nice, but she's a businesswoman. And I'm here to tell you, you know, how many of you have had friends who have had to go to the hospital, and when it was time for the friend to be released, they were told that they can't go home. They can't go back home. So usually they give the kids or whoever is helping them. Sometimes it's just a hospital worker. Usually they give them about 2 days notice and say, you know what, we're releasing them Saturday, they need a place to go. Or you need to show us that you have something in place. So the kids, the ones that converged, you know, over the weekend to plan mom and dad's life for the rest of their lives and go home on Monday, the kids will frantically start calling the in-home care, and they're shocked when they find out that nobody can come right out, because their first priority is going to be the people that they have relationships with. So even if you don't need them now, call Christy, invite her over, get to know her, so that, and then keep her on speed dial and make sure she doesn't forget about you. And so when you're ready, Christy's like, Tom, you know, sure, we'll get somebody over right away, because their priorities have to be to the clients that they already have relationships with. So just keep that in mind. It's not that she's mean. It's just that it's not like she looks really nice, but she's really mean. It's just that the demand is so high, and the demand's getting greater and greater every day as the baby boomers are getting older. And so, I mean, there's an explosion going on out there. And you've got to know where to go to, who to talk to, and how to get a few things in place ahead of time. If you never use them, that's great, but better to be prepared, right? So we're going to open it up for our Q&A, and let's start with our little lady in the front. Hi.
Hi, disclaimer, I am not with them. But I have to wholeheartedly agree. I'm on the younger side, I'm 66, and just before COVID, I lived in Silicon Valley, my mom got very ill. And I was fortunate enough that I wasn't, I was retired already. So I took a course in home health care because no one could come and help right away, we didn't have a relationship.
Question.
Yeah. What?
What's the question?
The
What's the
question
question?
is, what do you do in the situation, you were talking about your children jumping in and doing a plan, what do you do when the children, one is helping and the other one is fighting it? How do you handle that?
Call me. I have had a few kids. No, call me and I'll connect you with the appropriate professional. Okay? All right. Anybody else have a question? Tip.
I had a question. So she said something about the bank will take a loss.
So, oh, thank you.
I don't know what bank that is, but.
Well, yeah, so what the question was the part where I said that you, your heirs, which is when it could happen most commonly, would be after you pass away, the reverse mortgage will become due. There's not a senior living in the home anymore as their primary residence. You're gone. So your heirs have many options to pay off that reverse mortgage, and you have time, or they'll have time to do it. But one of the ways they do it mostly is to sell the home. There is a mortgage on that home. At that point in time, that mortgage includes your original loan amount you received, as well as any draws you've taken from your line of credit, as well as the interest that has accrued over time. So the balance I'm going to pay off on the reverse mortgage as the heir is going to be higher than when it started. So there's a number. You're going to go to Nancy and say, we need to sell mom's house. And in the bizarro world where somehow the values came down so far that the value Nancy could sell the house for did not cover the balance. Remember, I'm sure most of you guys were around in the whole mortgage crisis. The upside down. I owe more than the house is worth. Again, virtually impossible today, but let's pretend it happened. These mortgages have a non-recourse feature. It is in your loan documentation when you sign it, so you'll have the information there. And that means that your heirs will not owe any remainder. The insurance that is paid, that's part of the expense of a reverse mortgage. Remember I said they're expensive. Part of that is an insurance policy that your heirs will never pay more, so pay a deficit. I'll give you, it's easier to do numbers. Mom's house, the balance I have to pay off is $600,000. Today, the house I'm gonna sell it's worth $500,000. Do I have to, as the heir, come in with that extra $100,000 to make it, to make it a clean slate? No. So that is, if you wanna call it taking a loss, that is. It's the insurance policy there that says your heirs will not have to pay that deficit. Non-recourse.
So the insurance policy is part of your reverse mortgage that you're paying for?
That is correct.
Okay, next question.
Can you do a reverse mortgage if your home's in a trust?
Yes. Just do.
Great.
Can you repeat the questions?
Oh yeah, sorry. Reverse mortgage, can you be titled in a trust, a family trust? And the answer is yes.
How do interest rates compare with interest rates in just buying a home?
Oh well, today, interestingly enough, they're very, very similar. They're in the sevens. Today's conventional forward mortgage, I mean, today might be 6.875. Yesterday it was 7.25. But reverse mortgages are in the sevens.
Okay, next question.
I have a home care policy, so should I connect to make sure that I know what to do with if I need it?
Yes.
Yeah, I can definitely talk to you after, but really quick, the way it typically works is you have to reach out to your insurance and list a provider, and then the insurance will communicate with us. Typically, there's some period of time where you have to pay out of pocket before the policy comes into effect.
So the question was, she has a long-term care policy and she was just wondering how to tap into it. Any other questions? Richard?
Are distributions taxed?
Our distributions on the reverse mortgage
Reverse
tax.
mortgages are not seen as income, so no.
And if you, on the line of credit, you're paying the mortgage rate on that, less the interest you would be earning on the money, is that right?
You know what, it's better to just have a private conversation with her, because we want to get through as many as we can. Do you have a question, Christy?
Oh, no, that's fine.
You sure? Okay.
Well, it's great. If the village is that a lifetime community with buy-in?
No, there's no buy-in, and there's also no skilled nursing community under our wing. But that is, in San Luis Obispo, there's a couple skilled nursing communities that we kind of all use. But no, there's no buy-in.
So she asked if, the question was, is there they're called CRCCs, continuing care, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so what they are is these communities where you actually buy in, it costs a couple of $300,000, and it's a step above what the villages is, but our area here, I think the closest place is Santa Barbara. You'd have to go to Santa Barbara for one of those. Yes, Christy.
So then on the assisted care part, let's just say you fall and break a hip, or you have to have a hip replacement, and so you actually need a little extra care for a month or so. How does that work if you're in the facility? Let's just say you're in the facility just as a healthy person enjoying your retirement, and then something happens to you, but you don't really need to be in assisted care permanently. Just like maybe you have a heart attack and then it takes a couple months to recuperate, or a
Sure.
hip replacement or something.
So
that-
repeat the question if you can.
So you're asking if there is some kind of an incident while you're living in retirement living or assisted living, what does it look like for you from there? Is that
Yeah.
pretty much your question? So it is going to be a little bit different, your options for each person, right? Based on what happened. But typically what would happen, like if you broke your hip, is you would go to the hospital and they would fix it. And then they would direct you into most likely some kind of skilled nursing or rehab to help you get stronger. When they felt like you were good and strong enough, they would discharge you back to assisted living. If you were in independent living, you may get discharged back to independent living, or they may discharge you back to independent living with a little bit of help from somebody coming in. It just depends on whether they feel like you're going to continue to get stronger and once again do well in independent living, or if you're going to need more going forward. And we work with our residents no matter what it's going to look like going forward. So.
Okay, one more question. How about someone who hasn't asked a question yet?
This lady here has been raising her
Carol,
hand multiple
I am
times.
so sorry, Carol. There you go.
Yeah, questions are straight. I've been living happily and living with you for 6 years. But I'm running out of money. And I'd like to get what happens to me.
That is a good question. So, finances is definitely something that when people come in, I really encourage them not to come in at the top of their budget and to plan for their future. Because to be honest with you, when you're renting someplace and you run out of money and you can't pay the rent, then you are invited to find someplace else. and it really,
Do I get any help in that?
usually we would hook you up with some kind of a placement agency. And they know all the communities in town. They'll know some places that might have, different pricing. But I find that here locally, everybody's priced about the same. It may appear differently on the surface, but once you get into it, I find that the pricing is similar. And I think that's a real problem with people living longer. Pardon me?
Would I do a Medi-Cal now?
I'm not sure what your personal situation looks like.
Normally.
Yes, you would. I'm just gonna be blunt. You're just being nice. I'm just gonna be.
I don't want to assume what anybody else's
Right.
situation is.
So what we do is a lot of times, someone will come in and ask for a private consultation, and I will do just a cursory review with them of what their finances are. And it's not, you don't have to be a mathematical genius to be able to tell if you're going to have enough money. I always figure on you living to be 100, and then I'll say, do you think you're gonna live to be 100? They're like, well, maybe. And so, we kind of wanna, do that, figure it out ahead of time. And before I send you to the right community, I wanna make sure that it makes sense. I met a little lady, last month, and the hospital worker was taking her to these communities that there is no way on God's green earth she could afford. And she had already been to 2 or 3 of them, picked one out. I'm going to move over here. And I know enough, I've seen enough of this to ask her what her income was. I went through everything with her. And I said, I don't think you can afford this, unless you're planning to die. And I think it was 6 years. In 6 years, I said, you seem pretty healthy except for that knee operation you just had. So we, come talk to us. Talk to Spring, talk to me. I will be able to save you a lot of grief in that area. Okay, so everyone's going to stay after the seminar, so if you have more questions, just come speak to one of us. And I think it's time for our raffle.